Using animations in your VR game can be a great way to help immerse a player within the world that you are trying to create. And in the case of hand animations, if you're trying to create something like a multiplayer game, it can also help make a player feel more connected with the other players within the same area, lobby, whatever the case may be. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through how to create some very simple hand animations that you can add to your VR character in Unreal Engine. Before we go and jump into that, if you enjoy this video and want to see even more just like this one, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button down below. Lets me know that you guys enjoy this video and want to see even more just like this one. With that, let's go ahead and jump right into the video. Alright, so first things first, in order for this to work, I've actually brought in the mannequin hand from the Unreal Engine 4 VR template into Unreal Engine 5, since Unreal Engine 5 doesn't have any mannequin hands or anything. But the other thing I want to go through is I also want to just run through my quick setup here. So I didn't want to do just a simple grab release, as I thought that would be oversimplified and I would like to add in at least one more animation. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to add in 3 animations, and you'll actually see these here in a second. But I also wanted to determine what the best way to activate these animations in a nice simple way would be. So what I've actually decided to do is, you can see here I've created a couple more inputs that are specifically designed for the controls I'll be using. So I'll be using the A, B, as well as the trigger button, which was already assigned. So I only created inputs for the A and B button. You won't have these in your project most likely yet. So I would suggest, of course, adding these in and also putting it for your specific controller. Like I said, I'm doing an index controller, so your controller is probably going to be different, either touch, Vive wand, something like that. So next thing we're going to do is let's go and open up our content browser. And first thing I want to do is I want to create a nice simple enum or enumeration. So let me go ahead, not under there, virtual reality, mannequin, character. And I want to put it just one folder up above where our mesh and everything is. That way we can easily find it. I just didn't want to throw it in a folder all its own. So I'm going to go right into here and create a blueprint enumeration. So this is what you're going to want to do. And I'm going to do hand animation enum is what I'm going to call it. Now, you don't necessarily have to use an enum, but you do want some kind of float or integer value that you can use to resemble your animation, possibly 2, depending on how many animations you're going to have or anything like that. An enum, though, can be a real simple way to get a value based off of what's being chosen, or even just using I believe it's a select node to determine which enum value is actually being used. So this is actually the very basic structure when you actually create an enumeration in Unreal. So let's go and create 3 here real quick. And I'm going to call these rock, paper, scissors. Now, these actually do line up quite well with what I'm going to have these do. I'm going to have 3 animations, one for rock, one for paper, and one for scissors, because that will be quite fun. But I did want it in this general structure for a specific reason, and I'll touch on that once we get into our blend space, as that's how we're going to be developing this animation. If you've never worked with the blend space, I'll cover on that here in a second. I'll show you why I wanted it in this specific order. But you do also want to remember this order as well. So rock, paper, scissors. So let's go ahead now and go into our mesh, and let's go and open up our skeletal mesh here. And this is the hand that I'm working with. Let me actually slow down the camera a bit. So this is the hand I'll be working with. It's the same hand that you'll find in Unreal Engine 4. So if you're following along in Unreal Engine 4, you should have no problem continuing to follow along. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to want to create 3 animations. So we can do that by going up here to create asset and then create animation. And I'm going to do based off of the current pose. And I'm going to throw this into a new folder as well. Call this animations. And I'm going to name this animation paper. And for paper, I'm just going to leave it just standard how you see it here in its default position. But I do want to make sure that everything is keyed correctly. So I'm going to go right over here into our skeleton tree, select everything, and just make sure everything is keyed correctly. And it should have already worked just fine, but just to be safe there, I'm going to want to go through and create a second animation here. and I'll use the reference pose. And this one, let's go and call this one scissors. I think I spelled that right. And here, once you have a different animation that you want to use, this is where you're actually going to want to modify the pose of the hand here. So I'm actually going to want to go through, I find it's typically easier to go through the skeleton tree and grab the specific fingers that I want to grab. So I'm just going to go ahead and curl some of these around a little bit. And just so they make a more of a fist shape, I guess, for the ring, pinky, and thumb fingers. So let me also go and grab our ring finger, go and bring that down. I'm just curling all these up just a little bit. I'm not trying to make something perfect, just something nice and simple that pretty clearly resembles, and they're all pretty different from each other. That's the wrong way. I think I'm not curving that the right way. Yeah, I wasn't. There we go. And I think that's pretty nice and simple for scissors. And again, just to be safe, I'm going to go and key everything just to make sure that we have a pretty good position here. And I'm going to create one more, and this one I'm going to use the current pose. So it's going to take what we have here, and it's actually going to take this pose and it's going to use it for this new animation we create, which I actually do want to use, since all we really need to do with the rock is take our index and middle finger and curl it down so that way it's more of a fist shape. And it just occurred to me, I think I threw the scissors animation in the wrong one. That's fine. And last one we're going to do is rock. Okay. And as you can see again, it just kind of took our existing pose and brought it over. So let's go ahead and take our middle finger, curl that down a little bit. There we go. And then for our index finger as well. Now create a nice simple pose that we can use here. And again, I'm just going to key everything, just make sure everything is set correctly the way we want it. And that's going to be our fist here. So if you do have the default setup for all your windows here, you should have an asset browser down here in the bottom right. It should be down here somewhere. I moved it up here so that way you guys could easily see it. And you should now see in this asset browser, you should now see paper, rock, and scissors, which I actually didn't save all of these real quick. But you can actually easily just swap between them and make sure that they're all correct the way that you want them. So just by double clicking on each one. So in order to actually put these all together, we're going to need to create one more asset here, and this is going to be a blend space. You can actually see there's two here. There is actually a difference. A blend space, a standard blend space is going to have an X and a Y axis, and this will make more sense once I have this open. But the blend space 1D is what I'm actually going to be working with. This is only going to have an X axis. So this is very nice for just simple animations, and it'll actually be good for something like this as well. So I'm going to go and create a blend space 1D, and I'm just going to call this, I'm just going to call it animation blend space. And again, I just threw that into animations. You can see it added it right up here as well. So this is how we're actually going to set our animation. So this is actually going to take each of our animations, and it's actually going to automatically determine how the animation should go from one to the next, so on and so forth. So in order for this to work, let's go ahead and let me go and move that out of the way a little bit. Let's go and grab our three animations and drop them here on our blend space here. So I'm going to drop rock all the way to the left here, paper in the middle, and scissors all the way to the right. Now you are going to have a slight change here in Unreal Engine 4 if you want to see how these will act. In Unreal Engine 4, you should just be able to drag and click along. In Unreal Engine 5, though, they changed it. You have to hold down the Shift key. But you can see as we move along, we can actually go between our different poses that we had set up, or animations that we had set up. So you can actually see as I go back and forth, we go from rock to paper to scissors. Now there's one more thing I want to change here real quick though before we actually jump into our event graph and make this all actually function. And that's, I want to go right over here into our asset details, and I want to change this maximum axis value. What this actually does is, if you actually, as you drag along, you can actually see there's a value there. You can see it's right next to none, and it changes as we go up and down. So what I actually want to do is I want to decrease this for our enum to make it a little bit easier to work with. I'm going to change this to 2, and you'll see why here in a second as well. But as we go along, you can see it still works, but you can now see our value doesn't go all the way up to 100. Now it goes all the way up between 0 and 2 as we move along our x-axis value. Now if you're using a standard blend space, you'll also have a y as well, so you can actually have animations up here, down here. You can also, of course, have a different value on the y if you want to have more or less animations up top, anything like that. So, but that's a nice simple blend space I will be able to use for this animation. So let's go ahead and create our asset now, and this is going to be an animation blueprint. There we go. Let's go ahead and give that a quick save. So now here, this is where we're going to want to take our blend space that we had made. So let's go ahead and grab our blend space. So you should be able to, if we actually right click, you should be able to look up the name of the blend space, which is right here. So this is the one I had made, so blend space, and you can see here in quotation marks we have animation blend space. So that's what we're going to want to grab here, and we're going to feed that right into our result. And then the other thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to go ahead and create a variable here. Let's go and call this blend space enum. And here we're going to want to change our variable type to the enum we had made. So in our case, it was, if we actually go back out here, we're going to want to change it to this hand animation enum here. Let's go and change this to hand animation enum. Go and compile and save that. And you can actually see it defaulted to rock. I actually want to change this default to paper and not rock. And what we're going to do is we're simply going to drag this out, and we're going to drag this. Actually, we want to convert this to int, and then we want to take our int and drag that in. And if we actually go and compile and save that, you can see it automatically converted. You can see our animation actually changed to our paper position. And the reason for that is our enum values actually correspond to integer values. So if you actually go and open this back up, this rock will actually correspond to 0. Our paper will correspond to 1. And our scissors will correspond to 2. And if, as we have more, those will correspond to more and more numbers, which is why I wanted to simply use an enum, and I convert it to an int. And then of course we had to do one more conversion from an integer to a float, since that's what the blend space requires. But that really didn't have too much of a change. And we can actually test this some more too. If we actually go into edit preview, we can actually change this to rock, and you can see it changed. We can change it to scissors, and you can see it changed there as well. So now that we have our animation all set up here, let's go ahead and add this to our player. So this is going to be slightly different if you're in Unreal Engine 4. So let's go ahead and go right into your VR template. So if you're in Unreal Engine 4, you should have a second, I believe it's a pawn called BP, no, not BP motion controller. It should be, I think it's just called motion controller pawn, if I recall. And that's going to be your hands. Here in Unreal Engine 5, everything's all combined to one, so we really don't need to worry too much about that. But you're going to want to add in a skeletal mesh for each of your hands, depending on which, depending on wherever your hands actually are. So wherever your motion controllers are, that's where you're going to want to add your skeletal meshes. So let's go ahead and add real quick a skeletal mesh. And I'm just going to call it skeletal mesh left. And I'm going to add one to our right motion controller component as well. And this is going to be another skeletal mesh, and call it right. And for each of our skeletal meshes, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to grab our skeletal mesh here, and we're going to want to set our skeletal mesh to our mannequin hand. And Then we're going to want to, for our animation class, grab our animation that we had made. So in our case, it was mannequin hand right. And we're going to want to do that for each. There we go. And then one more change that I'm going to want to do for Unreal Engine 5. You're not going to need to do this for Unreal Engine 4, but for Unreal Engine 5, they actually default our motion controller components to display these Vive ones. So I actually want to disable that so we don't see them. And there we go. I think, oh, I almost forgot one thing. So we're also going to want to change the scale of our hand as well. So let's go ahead and let me see here. If our call, it is -1 on Y. Yes, I believe so. So -1 on Y, and that's going to actually invert our hand for our left hand. This mannequin, you can actually see as well, was designed for our right hand. So our right hand should pretty much be good to go here. So now let's go ahead and jump over into our event graph. So I've already done a little bit of work here. So I've already grabbed I've already grabbed our input actions for the buttons we'll be using. And then I've also gone ahead and here in our begin play, I've also gone ahead and separated off some space here so we can do a little bit of prep work here. So first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to get a reference to each of our animation instances. So starting with that, let's go ahead and starting with our left hand, we'll do get anim instance. And then we're going to want to cast that to mannequin hand right, since that's the animation blueprint that we had created. And then we're just going to want to promote that to a variable. Now this is a pretty long name, so I'm actually going to go and change this to left hand anim. And then we're just going to want to do the same thing for our right hand. So I'm going to go and bring this up a little bit. And we'll, again, get anim instance. And cast again to mannequin hand. And one more time, just go ahead and promote that to a variable. And again, I'm just going to change that name again to right hand anim. And then I'm just going to continue on right over here. So this is just saying our floor level. You'll probably have something similar to this if you're working on Unreal Engine 4. I think there's actually two things that go on here. I think it's set the tracking origin, and then I think if I recall, it's also setting the left hand motion controller component because that's actually a separate pawn, or I can't remember if it's a pawn or an actor. I'm pretty sure it's just a standard pawn, but I can't remember. Anyways, so moving down here, so what I'm going to do is using our controllers, I'm going to use trigger for our rock. I'll use the A button for paper and then our B button for scissors. So jumping right over into here, let's go and grab our references to our animation instances that we had already made. And starting with our left hand, let's go ahead and, what do we call that? We called it blend space enum. So we're going to want to grab our blend space enum, set blend space enum. And like I said, our trigger is going to set it to rock. Blend space enum. Our A button is going to set that to paper. And our B button, set blend space enum, is going to set that to scissors. And these are all doing this on pressed. It's not doing it on release or anything like that. So this is all pretty simple, pretty straightforward. And we're just going to do the same thing for our right hand animation. So set blend space enum. This first one will be set to rock. Actually, I'm just going to copy and paste this 2 more times. Just save a little bit of time. There we go. Right there. All right, and that's pretty much it. So that's our whole animation set up. So now we're going to have 2 different hands. You can actually see right here they're overlapping. So we'll have 2 different hands for each of our motion controller components. They'll each be attached to our motion controller components, so they'll both be following. And we'll be able to change the animation using our button presses that we had set here. And all of that will run through our blueprint that we made here, and that will run through our blend space, and that is everything there. So let's go and open this up in VR, and we will go ahead and give this a quick look. I've now gotten it working. I had to give the project a quick restart because it was doing something funny. But it's now working, so you can actually see, I think I have that pointing at the camera. So you can actually see if I press B, that goes to our scissors, trigger goes to a rock, and A goes back to paper. So it's nice and simple, nice easy animation there, and you can see it works with both hands, both individually. So and it's just tied up to those 3 buttons there. And of course you can make something different. You can of course tie it all to one button. It'd probably be a little bit complicated to do. You probably have to have some other triggers in there, overlap events probably. But anyways, yeah, that is our very basic hand animations all set up. So now we can do, hold on, rock, paper, and scissors. And just like that, we have some nice simple animations that we can use within our VR project. This is of course a very simple version of adding in hand animations to a VR project. You can of course add in much more different animations. You can have many different varieties, all sorts of cool different stuff. With that, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button down below. And with that, I will see you in the next reality.